As Lyndon Johnson would say, that's an introduction that my father would be proud of and my mother would believe. It's a dubious honor to be batting cleanup after such a great panel. And I could spend the rest of the afternoon giving specific policy recommendations about what we need to do to advance religious freedom, and there's a lot. In the 13 years since the passage of IRFA, we have seen the ongoing decline of religious liberty globally. The International Religious Freedom Act, which was amazingly ahead of its time when it was passed, needs some work done to it, and Frank Wolf has done some great things to advance that, as has Chris Smith, and we're working both on the House side and the Senate side to make that even stronger. But I actually wanted to focus today on the first word in the panel title, affecting. Sitting here in this room is the opportunity to change religious liberty in every country in the world if we act together to do it. And it's more than just talking about it. It's more than just the conferencing, and this is important, this is necessary. But when Chris Smith held a hearing on June 3rd on advancing religious liberty, I had to remind Chris and the other members that were there that they have to do this too. And as much as I'm glad that Tina has moved to the Beckett Fund, which is an amazing organization, her absence on the Hill means that there are not people dedicated just to that issue. We are all in a position to be able to guarantee that these issues remain active in the forefront of the minds of members of Congress. And unfortunately, it doesn't. As I was on the Senate, in the Senate just the other day talking about the reauthorization of IRFA, I heard reason after reason after reason after reason why it couldn't get more money, why it couldn't get more attention. There are two specific recommendations I have about IRFA, and so I take back my earlier, I'm not going to give any specific recommendations. One is that the office be moved out of the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor and into the Office of the Secretary, which was the original congressional intent in 1998. But the other is that the office needs program funding. That office is understaffed as it is, and with no ability to actively engage on the ground, it cannot fulfill its original mission or the mission that's been expanded under 1856. When I hear members of Congress say to me, well, is it really important? Is it really necessary? Should we really invest $25 million? The day before yesterday, the House authorized $37 million for the preservation of the Everglades. Important issue. But is $25 million too little to ask, or too much to ask? To save the 200 million Christians, the 3 billion people, the 70% of the global population that as we sit here right now are facing persecution in the world? I don't think so. But we're the only ones who can do it. Because it's our people who are affected. It's our co-religionists. And we have the capacity, the ability, the engagement to do it. But we have to. And we have to do it together. The religious liberty community has not always been the most united. The Religious Freedom Roundtable that is sponsored by Freedom House has done a wonderful job to be able to bring our groups together. But we have to march together. We have to do more than just talk. When there are issues that come up, as Sue Taylor from the Church of Scientology mentioned, in the countries that are our allies, these are the countries we should be talking to the most. These are the countries that should be getting the most pressure. Not just Saudi Arabia and China, or Iran and Iraq, all of which are fundamentally important. But when Hungary passes the day before yesterday, at midnight, the most restrictive religion law in Europe, not 10 days after giving up the presidency of the European Union, we have a problem. 90% of the evangelical churches in Hungary are now deregistered. 90%. Over 100 religious communities in Hungary have now been deregistered. Only 14 religious communities are going to be recognized. And the re-registration process is so egregious that it requires an act of parliament to be recognized as a religion with a 2/3 vote by the parliament. I'm not talking about China. I'm not talking about Iran. I'm talking about a member of the European Union that just for the last 6 months had the presidency. What have we done about it? What have our members of Congress done about it? The Helsinki Commission didn't put out a press release. USURF didn't say anything. The most we've seen was a passing statement about the religion law by Senator Cardin when he talked about the other problems of democracy in Hungary. Members of Congress, the executive branch, need to understand when they talk about human rights issues, they are talking about religious freedom. That when they're talking about democracy, you start with religious freedom. Because that is the heart of democracy. Because if an institution, a government, a state, any external force tells you you cannot believe, how can you talk about it? How can you write about it? How can you meet about it? Freedom of religion is the fundamental right, the fundamental freedom, and if we do not engage, if we do not affect and cause effect, we are just as responsible for the ongoing discrimination and persecution as are the states who commit it.
Well, thank you, Joe, and I want to